Before anything else, leave a like right now and subscribe to the channel, because that helps a lot to keep this kind of content live. More people get here, the discussion grows, and you don't miss any important update about what's happening behind the scenes in the NBA. With that done, take a deep breath, because what you're about to hear sounds like a movie script, but it's being treated as a real possibility inside the league. What started circulating behind the scenes left a lot of people in disbelief. The idea of the Golden State Warriors trying, in the same offseason, to make moves to add Giannis, Antetokounmpo, and LeBron James to the roster isn't just bold. It's something that completely defies the traditional logic of NBA roster building. We're not talking about random social media rumors, but information that has surfaced from sources who closely follow franchise movements. And when this kind of talk appears, even if it's far from practical reality, it reveals a lot about the desperation, the urgency, and the current state of an organization. The central point of this story revolves around Stephen Curry. Golden State knows it's living through the final years of a generational player, an athlete who redefined the game, changed the way basketball is played, and delivered 4 titles to the franchise. The question echoing inside the front office is simple and cruel at the same time. What else can be done to try to give him one last real chance to fight for another ring? It's in this context that names like Giannis Antetokounmpo and LeBron James show up in the same paragraph, something that, not long ago, would have sounded like pure delusion. When it comes to Giannis, the conversation has dragged on for years. Ever since the first signs of frustration in Milwaukee, every offseason brings the same question. What if he asks out? What if the Bucks decide to rebuild? What if a monumental trade happens? The problem is that wanting something doesn't mean being able to execute it. The Milwaukee Bucks aren't a naive franchise, and they're not in liquidation mode. If Giannis is ever traded, the price will be historic. This isn't about a typical package of average players and uncertain future picks. This is a demand that reshapes the market. This is where Golden State runs into harsh reality. Over the last few years, the franchise bet on the so-called two-timeline strategy. The idea was simple on paper: compete in the present with Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, while developing young talent to take over in the future. In practice, that bet came with an extremely high cost. The young players didn't become stars quickly, and the veteran core aged without the support needed to keep battling at the top. When you look coldly at the available assets, it's hard to imagine a package that would truly excite Milwaukee. Heavy contracts, players coming back from serious injury, young guys who still haven't proven consistent high-level impact, and draft picks that very likely won't be high. The Bucks have no interest in waiting 5 or 6 years for late first-round picks to turn into something relevant. They want immediate return, or at least assets that can accelerate a real rebuild. Even if Golden State put everything it can offer on the table, there would still be competition. Other franchises have more valuable picks, more promising young talent, and greater flexibility to absorb contracts. That makes the idea of Giannis wearing a Warriors jersey closer to a distant dream than a concrete plan. And yet, the mere fact that this conversation exists already shows how disconnected from reality the current situation has become. On the other side of this story is LeBron James. Here, the scenario changes, but it doesn't necessarily get easier. LeBron has been linked to Golden State at other moments, especially after shared experiences with Curry on the biggest international stages. The idea of seeing 2 of the greatest players in history playing together naturally stirs the imagination of any fan. But once you get into the financial and contractual details, everything starts to fall apart. LeBron isn't an ordinary player. Even at 40, he doesn't see himself and isn't treated as someone willing to accept a minimum contract or a reduced role. He still produces at a star level, still carries a franchise offensively, and still requires a major financial commitment. Golden State, on the other hand, is boxed in. There's no cap space, no simple margin to open up a contract the size LeBron usually signs without dismantling practically the entire roster. In previous attempts, there were talks, feelers, and even more direct contact. At one point, the possibility of a trade was discussed, but it ran into a lack of interest on the other side. Los Angeles made it clear it had no intention of facilitating LeBron's departure, and the player himself, along with his inner circle, reinforced the desire to stay where he was at that time. That doesn't mean nothing can change, but it shows how unlikely this union has always been. There's also the time factor. Even if LeBron reaches free agency, the clock doesn't favor Golden State. Every wrong decision from the past weighs heavier now. Long contracts, poorly used picks, and wasted opportunities created a situation where any big move depends on almost a cap miracle. Imagining LeBron accepting a salary exception to join the Warriors sounds as unlikely as imagining Giannis being traded for a package clearly inferior to the market. At the end of the day, what these speculations reveal isn't a well-structured plan, but an organization searching for a desperate way out. When you start linking two of the biggest names in today's NBA to the same destination without having the resources to make it happen, it becomes clear the problem is deeper. It's not just about who arrives, but about everything that wasn't done before. This situation opens the door to another unavoidable discussion. To what extent did Golden State waste precious years of Stephen Curry's career with misguided decisions? How far does the front office's responsibility go for insisting on ideas that never materialize? These questions don't have simple answers, but they become more urgent as time passes. Continues in the next part, where we get fully into the impact of these choices, the real possibilities for movement involving heavy contracts, and what this means for the franchise's immediate future and for Curry's legacy. When you look at the situation from a bit more distance, it becomes clear that these grand ideas emerge as a direct consequence of a long sequence of poorly calculated decisions. Golden State didn't get to this point out of nowhere. There was a slow build, marked by excessive bets on young players who weren't ready, and an exaggerated confidence that the glorious past could be repeated simply through the power of the franchise name and the historic talent of Stephen Curry. The internal message was always patience. Patience to develop, patience to wait for the fit, patience for the young guys to mature alongside the veterans. The problem is that the NBA doesn't work at that pace when you have a player of Curry's caliber aging. Every season that passes without a truly competitive roster isn't just a lost year. It's a historic opportunity thrown away. And that weighs not only in the cold analysis of results, but also in how players around the league perceive you. When a franchise starts to be seen as indecisive, reluctant to take real risks, and trapped in a vision that has already proven flawed, it loses power in negotiations. Other teams notice, agents notice, players notice, and that directly affects the credibility of any future proposal. It doesn't matter how ambitious the talk is. If the assets being offered don't reflect that ambition, no one takes it seriously. That's where the discussion about heavy contracts and trying to use them as leverage for something bigger comes in. Big salaries can be valuable tools in trades, but only when they come with real talent or strategic flexibility. When the contract exists almost like a burden, something that needs to be moved more out of necessity than value, your bargaining power disappears. The other side knows you're under pressure, and no one makes concessions when they smell desperation. At the same time, today's NBA market is more stuck than ever. Franchises learned from past mistakes. Few are willing to blow everything up without solid guarantees. Superstars don't become available all the time, and when they do, the process is slow, careful, and extremely competitive. Expecting two names as massive as Giannis Antetokounmpo and LeBron James to align at the same time with a financial situation this tight is betting against the league's logic. That doesn't mean Golden State is completely out of options, but it does mean the real options are far less glamorous than these speculations make them sound. Marginal adjustments, smaller bets, partial retooling attempts around Curry would be more coherent paths. The problem is those paths don't sell headlines, don't feed grand dreams, and don't mask the frustration that has already taken over part of the fan base. There's also the human side of this story. Stephen Curry isn't just a basketball asset. He's the face of an era. Players at that level rarely have their entire careers tied to one franchise, and when that happens, people expect an almost symbolic commitment in return. It's not just about titles, but about respect, planning, and honesty. Promising contention that never materializes creates a dangerous disconnect between message and reality. When you look back, it becomes impossible to ignore how many opportunities passed by. Draft picks that could have been converted into immediate talent. Trades that were avoided out of attachment to young players who never reached the expected level. Negotiations abandoned out of fear of making a mistake, when inaction usually costs even more. Each of these decisions built the current scenario, where the franchise depends on almost unreal situations to dream big again. The hardest part is admitting that even with all of Curry's genius, there's a limit to what one player can do. He still delivers extraordinary performances, still changes games by himself, still produces historic moments. But basketball is still a team sport, and the league is deeper, more athletic, and more strategic than ever. Having an icon isn't enough. You need structure around him. Deep down, all this talk about Giannis and LeBron functions almost like a mirror. It reflects the difficulty of accepting that time passed, the strategy failed, and the cycle may be nearing the end without the closure everyone wanted. That doesn't erase what was built, and it doesn't diminish how great what this franchise represented has been. But it makes it clear that future decisions will need to be more honest, even if they're less spectacular. The real question isn't whether these moves will happen, because everything suggests they won't. The real question is what Golden State will do when it finally faces reality head-on. Keep selling illusions, or begin a painful but necessary process of redefinition. Any choice will have deep consequences, both on the court and symbolically. If you made it this far, leave a like right now and subscribe to the channel to keep following deep analysis, no filter and no fantasy, about what's happening behind the scenes in the NBA. That strengthens the debate and makes sure this kind of content keeps reaching you. Kai Sotto has been drawing attention for his talent and the potential to become a dominant center in the league. Standing at 7'3", he's not only a rim protector but also a player who has greatly improved offensively. The question is, would he fit into the Warriors system? We know that adapting to the NBA is not easy, especially for a player coming from an international background. But Kai has already shown that he faces challenges head-on. Since beginning his professional basketball career, he has displayed an impressive learning curve and a growth mindset that could make all the difference. The Warriors always prioritize versatile players who know how to move well without the ball and contribute on both ends of the court. And that's where Kai Sotto could shine. He's not just a traditional center who protects the paint, but also a mobile and intelligent player capable of helping with offensive plays. The big question now is, who will give Kai Sotto this chance? The Warriors could benefit from a young and promising center, but other teams may also be eyeing him. What's certain is that he has all the potential to grow in the NBA, as long as he gets the right opportunity. Kai Sotto's future is promising, but he still needs to find the team and system that best suit his style. If the Warriors decide to give him a chance, it could not only strengthen the roster, but also bring a new dynamic to Golden State's front court. After all, with the Warriors' winning mentality, the sky is the limit for any young talent. So, did you like the video? Don't waste any time and hit the like button because it helps a lot with spreading the word. If you have anything to add or want to share your opinion, leave a comment. We love hearing what you think. And of course, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates about our team. See you next time, everyone. Let's go together towards another great season.